This is Ruth Chambers with the Chambers Street Theater, and of course we have in our control room today the rest of our team. There are three of us who do this show every week, Alex Silva-Satter and Bryce Parker, and today we're going to have a lot of images of the Yukon, and this would be for the gold rush of the latter part of the 1800s. And we're going to be reading some things from Robert W. Service. In order to get to Dawson, you had to go up a giant mountain that was covered in snow. So it looked like an ice mountain. And for a miner to even get into the back country, he was required to have about 400 pounds of food because there wasn't any food that you could forage for. So they weren't letting people just go in there to die. And unfortunately, a lot of people did die. And that's what this poem is about. It's talking about some of the seriousness of that gold rush, and it's not what we usually think of Robert W. Service, the seriousness, because his two most famous poems, Dan McGrew and Sam McGee, have a humorous angle to them. But this one, we're going to start off with the Trail of 98. Robert W. Service worked in a bank all of his life, or most of his life, until he became financially independent. And he associated with real people, so he knew the real stories. And he went through the areas in Canada and Alaska, and he knew. And there we have the picture of that trail, that mountain of ice, and the chain of people going up the mountain of ice. And we're going to start the Trail of 98. Gold! We leapt from our benches. Gold! We sprang from our stools. Gold! We wheeled in the furrow, fired with the faith of fools. Fearless, unfound, unfitted, far from the night and the cold, heard we the clarion summons, followed the master leer, gold. Men from the sands of the Sunland, men from the woods of the West, men from the farms and the cities, into the Northland we pressed. Gray beards and striplings and women, good men and bad men and bold, leaving our homes and our loved ones, crying exultantly, cold! Never was seen such an army pitiful, futile, unfit. Never was seen such a spirit, manifold courage and grit. Never has been such a cohort under one banner unrolled as surged to the rugged-edged Arctic, urged by the arch-tempter, gold. Farewell, we cried to our dearests, little we cared for their tears. Farewell, we cried to the humdrum and the yoke of the hireling years. Just like a pack of schoolboys, and the big crowd cheered us goodbye. Never were hearts so uplifted, never were hopes so high. The spectral shores flitted past us, and every whirl of the screw hurled us nearer to fortune, and ever we planned what we'd do with the gold when we got it. Big, shiny nuggets like plums, there in the sand of the river, gouging it out with our thumbs. And one man wanted a castle, another a racing stud. A third would cruise in a palace yacht like a red-necked prince of blood. And so we dreamed and vaulted, millionaires to a man, leaping to wealth in our visions, long ere the trail began. We landed in windswept Skagway. We joined the weltering mass, clambering over their outfits, waiting to climb the pass. We tightened our girths and our pack straps. We linked on the human train, struggling up to the summit where every step was a pain. Gone was the joy of our faces, grim and haggard and pale. The heedless mirth of the shipboard was changed to the care of the trail. We flung ourselves in the struggle, packing our grub in relays, step by step to the summit in the bale of the winter days, floundering deep in the sump holes, stumbling out again, crying with cold and weakness, crazy with fear and pain. Then from the depths of our travail, ere our spirits were broke, grim, tenacious, and savage, the lust of the trail awoke. "Klondike or bust," rang the slogan, "every man for his own." Oh, how we flogged the horses, staggering skin and bone. Oh, how we cursed their weakness, anguish they would not tell, breaking their hearts in our passion, lashing them on till they fell. For grub meant gold to our thinking, and all that could walk must pack. The sheep for the shambles stumbled, each with a load on its back, and even the swine were burdened, and grunted and squealed and rolled, and men went mad in the moment, huskily clamoring, "Cold!" Oh, we were brutes and devils, goaded by lust and fear. Our eyes were strained to the summit. The weaklings dropped to the rear, falling in heaps by the trail side, heartbroken, limp and wan. But the gasps closed in an instant, and heedless the chain went on. Never will I forget it there on the mountain face, ant-like men with their burdens clinging in icy space, dogged, determined, and dauntless, cruel and callous and cold, cursing, blaspheming, reviling, and ever that battle cry, "Cold!" Thus toiled we, the army of fortune, in hunger and hope and despair, till glacier, mountain, and forest vanished, and radiant fair, there at our feet lay Lake Bennett, and down to its welcome we ran. The trail of the land was over. The trail of water began. We built our boats and we launched them. Never has been such a fleet, a packing case for a bottom, a mackinaw for a sheet, shapeless, grotesque, lopsided, flimsy, makeshift and crude, each man after his fashion, built as best as he could. Each man worked like a demon, and proud to rudder we raced. The winds of the wild cried, "Hurry!" The voice of the waters, "Haste!" We hated those driving before us. We dreaded those pressing behind. We cursed the slow current that bore us. We prayed to the God of the wind. Spring, and the hillsides flourished, vivid in jeweled green. Spring, and our heart's blood nourished envy and hatred and spleen. Little cared we for the spring birth, much cared we to get on. Stake in the great white channel, stake ere the best be gone. The greed of the gold possessed us, pity and love we forgot. Covetous visions obsessed us, brother with brother fought. Partner with partner wrangled, each one claiming his due, wrangled and halved their outfits, sawing their boats in two. Thus wise we voyaged, Lake Bennett, Tagish, then Windy Arm, sinister, savage and baleful, bolding our hate and harm. Many a scow was shattered there on that iron shore. Many a heart was broken, straining at sweep and oar. We roused Lake Marsh with a chorus, we drifted many a mile. There was a canyon before us, cave-like its dark defile. The shores swept faster and faster, the river narrowed to wrath. Waters that hissed disaster reared upright in our path. Beneath us the green tumult churning, above us the cavernous gloom, around us swift twisting and turning the black sullen walls of a tomb. We spun like a chip in a mill race, our hearts hammered under the test. Then, oh, the relief on each chill face, we roared into sunlight and rest. Hand sought for hand on the instant, cried we, our troubles are o'er. Then, like a rumble of thunder, heard we Canorus roar. Leaping and boiling and seething, saw we a cauldron aflume. There was the rage of the rapids, there was the menace of doom. The river springs like a racer, sweeps through the gush and the rock, butts at the boulder-ribbed bottom, staggers and rears at the shock, leaps like a terrified monster, writhes in its fury and pain. Then, with the crash of a demon, springs to the onset again. Dared we that ravening terror, heard we its din in our ears, called on the gods of our fathers, juggled forlorn with our fears, sank to our waists in the fury, tossed to the sky like a fleece. Then, when our dread was the greatest, crashed into safety and peace. But what of the others that followed, losing their boats by the score? Well could we see them and hear them strung down that desolate shore. What of the poor souls that perished? Little of them shall be said. On to the Golden Valley, pause not to bury the dead. Then there were days of drifting, breezes soft as a sigh. Night trailed her robe of jewels over the floor of the sky. The moonlit stream was a python, silver, sinuous, vast, that writhed on a shroud of velvet. Well, it was done at last. There were the tents of Dawson, there the scar of the slide. Swiftly we poled o'er the shallow, swiftly leapt over the side. Fires fringed the mouth of Bonanza, sunlit gilded the dome. The tense of the trail was over. Thank God, we were home. And so they finally got to Dawson. And it was a very rough trail, but they did make it, some of them. And when they got to Dawson, there were saloons and tents and strange people. One of the strange people is Dan McGrew, and one of the famous poems by Robert W. Service is The Shooting of Dan McGrew. And I hope you enjoy this. We have some special effects for you in the control room. A bunch of the boys were swooping it up at the Malamute Saloon. The kid that handles the music box was hitting a jag-time tune. Back of the bar in a solo game sat Dangerous Dan McGrew. And watching his luck was his light o' love, the lady that's known as Lou. When out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the din and the glare, there stumbled a miner fresh from the creeks, dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with a foot in the grave, and scarcely the strength of a louse. He tilted a poke of dust on the bar, and he called for drinks for the house. There was none could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourselves for a clue, but we drank his health, and the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrew. There's men that somehow just grip your eyes and hold them hard like a spell, and such was he, and he looked like to me a man who had lived in hell, with a face most hair and the dreary stare of a dog whose day is done. As he watered the green stuff in his glass, the drops fell one by one. Then I got to figuring who he was and wondering what he'd do, and I turned my head, and there watching him was the lady that's known as Lou. His eyes went rubbering round the room, and he seemed in a kind of daze, till at last that old piano fell in the way of his wandering gaze. The ragtime kid was having a drink. There was no one else on the stool. So the stranger stumbles across the room and flops down there like a fool. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then he clutched the keys with his talon hands. My God, that man could play. Were you ever in the great alone when the moon was awful clear, and the icy mountains hemmed you in with a silence you could almost hear, with only the howl of a timber wolf, and you camped there in the cold? A half-dead thing in a stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold. While high overhead, green, yellow, and red, the north lights swept in bars, then you've a hunch what that music meant. Hunger and night and the stars. And hunger not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of lonely men for a home and all that means, for a fireside far from the cares that are, four walls and a roof above, but oh, so crammed full of cozy joy and crowned with a woman's love. A woman dearer than all the world, and true as heaven is true. God, how ghastly she looks through her rouge, the lady that's known as Lou. Then on a sudden the music changed so soft you could scarce could hear, but you felt that your life had been looted clean of all that it once held dear. That someone had stolen the woman you loved, that her love was a devil's lie, that your guts were gone and the best for you was to crawl away and die. 'Twas the crowning cry of a heart's despair, and it thrilled you through and through. I guess I'll make it a spread misery, said Dangerous Dan McGrew. The music almost died away. Then it burst like a pent-up flood. It seemed to say, repay, repay. And my eyes were blind with blood. The thought came back of an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash. And the lust awoke to kill, to kill. Then the music stopped with a crash, and the stranger turned, and his eyes, they burned in a most peculiar way. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt he sat, and I saw him sway. And boys, says he, you don't know me, and none of you care a damn, but I want to sate, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true, that one of you is a hound of hell, and that one is Dan McGrew. Then I ducked my head, and the lights went out, and 2 guns blazed in the dark, and a woman screamed, and the lights went up, and 2 men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead lay dangerous Dan McGrew, while a man from the creeks lay clutched to the breast of the lady that's known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They say that the stranger was crazed with hooch, and I'm not denying it's so. I'm not so wise as the lawyer guys, but strictly between us two. The woman that kissed him and pinched his poke was the lady that's known as Lou. Well, Robert W. Service probably heard all those stories when he talked to people that he actually knew from the mines and from Dawson and Skagway. And I bet his stories are based on real stories, just like Mark Twain's stories. I like Robert W. Service. He has a much lighter side. You know, the mining and such were very difficult, and of course life in a saloon is not too easy. But he had kind of a whimsical side too, that Robert W. Service. And I want to read the Bread Knife Ballad. This is a lovely little ballad, and we have an interesting illustration. A little child was sitting upon her mother's knee, and down her cheeks the bitter tears did flow. And as I sadly listened, I heard this tender plea. 'Twas uttered in a voice so soft and low. Please, mother, don't stab father with the bread knife. Remember 'twas a gift when you were wed. But if you must stab father with the bread knife, please, mother, use another for the bread. Not guilty, said the jury, and the judge said, set her free. But remember, it must not occur again, and next time you must listen to your little daughter's plea. Then all the court did join in this refrain. Whoops, I turned 2 pages. Please, mother, don't stab father with the bread knife. Remember, 'twas a gift when you were wed. But if you must stab father with the bread knife, please, mother, use another for the bread. Well, I like that one. We're going to do one more that's a little silly. It's a lot silly. And if you find Lipstick Liz, a lady of questionable reputation, shocking, this is the time for you to put your hands over your ears and to close your eyes, because we're going to read it anyway. Lipstick Liz. Oh, Lipstick Liz was in the biz. That's the oldest known in history. She had a lot of fancy rags. Of her form she made no mystery. She had a man, a fancy man. His name was Alexander. He used to beat her up because he couldn't understand her. Now, Lipstick Liz, she loved her man, and she couldn't love no other. So when she saw him with a Broadway blonde, her rage she could not smother. Oh, she saw them once and she saw them twice, but the third time nearly crazed her. So she walked into a hardware store and she bought a brand new razor. Now Lipstick Liz, she trailed them two, for she was tired of weeping. She trailed them two to a flash hotel, and there she found them sleeping. So she gashed them once, and she gashed them twice, their jugular veins to sever, and the bright blood flowed in a pool between, and their lives were done forever. I like that. Now, Lipstick Liz, she went to the police and says she, "My hands are gory, and you'll put me away in a deep dark cell when once you've heard my story." So they put her away in a deep dark cell until her life be over. And what is the moral of the whole damn show? I wish I could discover. Oh, Lipstick Liz, what a lousy life this is. It's a hell of a break for a girl on the make. Oh, Lipstick Liz. And that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed Robert W. Service. This is Ruth Chambers with the Chambers Street Theater. Look for your blessings. They're there, waiting for you. Bye-bye.